All right, we ready? We can see it. Hi everyone. Morning. Great to be here. Lovely to have you all in the room. Thank you so much for coming on board. My name is Morgan. I'm from Annex. I'm a service designer. And today I'm going to be talking about building the right thing is a team sport. So let's start with something a bit fun. You might be wondering what I know about team sport, and it's a very valid question. Not much, really, is the answer. I'm in no way a professional athlete or claim to be. I don't know the strategies, I don't know the tactics. There is some proof that I have done team sports. On the left we can see school camp, very early on in the day. Canoeing, you learn those foundational things when you're doing your obligatory team sport, which is communication, working together, making sure that you're communicating properly on very flat water. And then if we look at the now-ish, which was actually in New Zealand a little while ago, whitewater rafting, we're kind of adding to that, right? It's the communication and navigating rough waters together, if that's not too on the nose. But you do learn a lot by going through that as a team, right? You want to make sure you've got a great team around you that can support you and work together, great communication and collaboration. In all honesty, team sports now looks a little bit like this, which is a themed cocktail while watching the Matildas play, okay? But even on the sidelines, we can see a lot about how teams work together and how they interact and what happens from there. If we pull this from a team context into a project context, sometimes projects can feel a little bit like this, a little bit disjointed, finger pointing, trying to work together and collaborate together, and it can be a little bit challenging. But really what we're aiming for is this. And any High School Musical fans in the room, or if you know of it, we want the synchronized singing, synchronized dancing, but we want to feel more like this. We're working together to reach that common goal. So today, in true design fashion, I want to start with a how might we? And that's where we're going to go from here on this talk. So how might we help teams align and work together to build the right thing? Now, if you're not quite sure what service design is, I'm sure most of you know in the room, but service design does look at the business experience, it looks at the user's experience, it looks at the whole experience. So we're looking at systems, processes, touch points, all of the things in between. As part of service design, we have these very clear principles which come out, so co-creation, iteration, user centricity. I'm not going to go through each of these today. It's more about how they come up when we start to go and work as a team, and some of the principles that we use at Annex to try and make sure that we are building the right thing together. Let's start with the right players. We want to have the right players on the field, we want to have the right players in the team, and on the projects, okay? So who is on the team? Obviously all of us, our specialists, and that is everyone. So we're looking at designers, testers, delivery, content, everything in between, development obviously. Having everyone on the team is really important. There are different points in time on a project, which is great to have more on board, which I'll go through shortly, but important that we're all in the room. Who else is on the team is our clients. If you're working with clients, we want to make sure that we are bringing them on board as well. It's something we really try and prioritize at Annex to make sure we are making our clients feel like they are on board and they're part of the team. So having them along in stand-ups, making sure they're involved in workshops and things like that, making sure they're part of the team is really important. And finally, as a service designer, it would be remiss of me not to mention the users. They are also on the team. We're building the products for them, and that is our internal and external users, okay? We're looking at both lenses here, depending on the product that we're building. Really important to have them on board. And through all of these, it's important to have that mix of different voices in the room, right? We want diversity in thought. We want to have those great conversations, those rich conversations, to make sure that we are covering all of our bases and having products that are truly made for everyone. So, we've got the right players. Now let's have a look at the right time, the right point in time. So everyone will probably be familiar with this. This is actually based off the double diamond method, but it's our kind of clear stages in a project, right? So discover, define, develop, deliver. As a service designer, I'm usually in the discover and define phases of things. So really looking at that foundational side of the project. And why I love discovery is that it is that true foundational side. We are uncovering those problems, we're getting into the weeds, We're understanding our users, we're understanding the problems to be solved, and what those constraints and opportunities are. And it really does set the tone for the rest of the project on that direction. We're often writing a lot of insights, a lot of recommendations, all in usually a very big report. And we also have the artifacts, so our journey maps and personas that really help as a collaboration tool and a communication tool with others. But sometimes with discovery, it can be a little bit lonely. Sometimes you are the sole researcher or person involved, and actually what we like to do at Annex is have it so that we've got more involved earlier on, and those different disciplines and those different specialties. So understanding the users together, understanding the problems to be solved together, and understanding constraints and opportunities together. So that's our clients and our different specializations. And why is that important? Well, it creates user centricity and that user empathy from the start, okay? Instead of trying to absorb all this information in an insight and a recommendation, we're actually bringing everyone on board truly. And it means that through the future phases of the project, suddenly it's much easier to recall that user who said that pain point rather than trying to remember an insight, okay? So coming on board earlier is way, way easier. If you haven't been involved in discovery, what that looks like, it could be listening in on user interviews. So that really creates that user centricity, and you can really learn a lot about the users, and it takes you through the rest of the project. One of my favorite things to do, and something that we have with our clients, one of our clients last year, was having our clients on board to observe user interviews, and the best part is the 15-minute debrief after a 60-minute interview. It's like a light bulb goes off, it's like people are connecting the dots, and suddenly there's this, oh my gosh, we need to fix this for these people. Like, there's so many pains here we need to fix. And that's something that you can't always see when you read a report or you see an artifact. The other way to get involved is by participating in wireframing and defining workshops, so it really builds that shared understanding. Having everyone on board with the different viewpoints, different opinions is a really valuable way to kind of shape and build the direction. And then also contributing to those artifacts. We all have different unconscious biases and things like that, so having other people in the room who can kind of sense check things or heard things differently is really great for those research outputs as well. So join us in discovery. It is really great. So any researchers in the room or service designers, if people aren't usually on board in discovery, invite them in. It doesn't have to be that you're like doing the work necessarily, but it's more about being involved in the process. And similarly, if you're not in discovery, definitely ask the question if you can join in. It's going to be really valuable for the remainder of the project. So, we've talked about the right players, we've talked about the right timing. Let's talk about the understanding, right? All of the players and the timing is not useful if we're not actually speaking the same language, if we're not reading off the same page. So here are some of the techniques that we like to use in terms of getting that shared understanding. So the first one is showing the thinking, and this is not a new principle, it's a very foundational UX principle where we show all of the process of how we've got to something. And it looks a little bit like this, and this is in the term of a wireframe, but it could be another type of solution, it could be a decision, a workflow, a user flow. So instead of just showing what's on the left here, which is a simple wireframe, it's showing all of the process. So we're seeing a bit of current state here, it's very zoomed out, but there's requirements on the page, there's a user flow, and then all of the different iterations of the wireframe. Now, obviously it's got to be done at the right time. We want to share this at the right time, it's not for every instance which we'll show this. But it's a really great way to build that trust and transparency with your clients because they can see that you've done all the thinking. We haven't just kind of gone, here's a solution. We've done the thinking, we've done the different iterations of things. So it's a really great opportunity to do that with them. And the other reason is if the solution is not quite right, then it's a great way to come back and like slowly step back to see what maybe could be tweaked or changed or isn't quite landing. How you climb a mountain is more important than reaching the top, kind of speaks to this quote very well. Reaching the top of the mountain is very important in our line of work, but showing the work is also going to be really valuable to build that trust and transparency and make sure that everyone is understanding your thought process and where you got there. The next one is to ask the right questions. Seems pretty basic. It's something we think about a lot in research. We want to make sure that we have the best questions so that we get the best insights from our users. So some of the ways that we can bring that into the project space is through open-ended questions. Okay, closed questions, those ones that have a yes/no answer, don't open up the conversation, right? We want to try and bring in more of those open-ended questions so people feel like it's a safe space to share, and also to give those kind of different opinions or ways of thinking about things. So what that could look like is, these are some of our favourite questions. What problem are we trying to solve? A very good one to come back to a lot. Really clarifying the why, really important. What do you dislike or like about something? That's way better than saying, do you like this? That's a yes/no. So having the what you like or dislike about it opens it up. And it's a really great way to start to see some of the nuance instead of just saying yes, no, but I feel this way. So yeah, really opens it up. And then what haven't we thought about? We collectively is a nice way to say what haven't I thought about or what haven't you thought about. So the we is a really nice way to open that up as well. The last one is collaborative wireframing. And again, wireframing is not a new concept. We all go back to wireframing every now and then, but how we like to use it at Annex is a little bit more collaboratively, right? And it's really including our clients and all of our specialties on board early on. I don't have a fancy video or anything, but I have some screenshots of what it could look like, and it does look pretty similar to the other page. But this is about coming together and actually focusing on the boxes on the page. We're focusing on function. It's a great space because you don't have to be a designer to look at boxes on the page. It's a great space to pull out some of those constraints, some of the requirements. If we've got editors in the room, like website editors and the clients on that side, it's a great way to kind of pull out all of these other pain points maybe we hadn't heard about before, and really try and build something together. So this is less about what happens with the design, and it's more about the conversation it creates, which is really important to have because it is building that narrative and that trust with others. So from here, it's a really strong starting point for future phases. You know, you've got a baseline that you can pick up and start designing and taking it from there. It's also a really strong starting point for user testing and validating some of these thought patterns. But you've also come up with it together with the client. So you've brought people on board, and that's really, really valuable as well. It also brings out some of those requirements, constraints, and that functionality is prioritized and breaks down the barriers for people. As I said, it's just boxes on the page. Can be a little bit less intimidating than, say, going and doing a full design workshop and lots of design thinking things. It is simply those boxes. So, coming back to the how might we? How might we help teams align and work together to build the right thing? Well, we've gone through a few of them. So it's really about having the right players. So we're on board a little bit earlier, we're working together, but we want those different specialties. We want the different points of view because it's going to really help us going through the remainder of a project. We want to have people at the right time. Earlier is better. When we're learning together in discovery, it can truly build that empathy moving forward, particularly when, say, service designers or researchers aren't involved in the rest of the project, right? It's that kind of inherent user empathy that you can take through the rest. And then with the same understanding, taking the time to get on the same page, taking the time to really understand it together so that you can have great project outcomes for the rest of the project. Because building the right thing is a team sport, and we need to make sure we come back to that and work together, particularly in a very changing time. You know, obviously AI is a very big topic at the moment, but that is a lot of change. So coming together and making sure that we're working together is really important for this as well. And that's it. That's me.
Thank you for the presentation. Your last slide talked about the right people, the right time. Now, I do quite a bit of work for government where you don't get the right people and they're not available at the right time. So the worst case scenario.
Yep.
What happens then?
I wish there was a simple answer to that. It is a complex one. I think, yeah, if the people aren't available and the timing is off, it can make it really a struggle. So I totally hear that. I think coming back to that communication, when we can discuss things, when we can bring people on board is really great to have from the outset. So trying to set those expectations early and making sure that's managed. If people can't come along, it's how else can we include them in the experience if they're not available. So do we need to record things? Do we need to do a little Loom video to share the thinking? Because we're not always going to have everyone available at the same time. So what are the ways that we can kind of get ahead of it earlier in the process, have those clear communications early, and really establishing what your requirements are and what your expectations are for who's going to be available and at what points in time, I think is probably the way I'd approach it as a starting point.
Yeah, great presentation, thanks. I liked your discussion about collaborative wireframing, and we've gone down that road ourselves quite as we give them permissions on your Figma board and tell them to kind of have fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your experiences about that, because it's it's a powerful approach to take, but don't give them a lot, so you lose control, right?
Yeah.
So how do you balance that off?
Yeah. So I think being in there together is really good, and having, again, the right people in the room. So we have our designers, we have researchers, we have people who know about accessibility and know about best practice. So we do have some guardrails up, in the sense of if someone throws something out that's a little bit wild, we can say, oh, actually it's not best practice to do it that way. We'd bring it into this line, but what are you trying to achieve with that? So again, it is about that conversation point and what their goals are. But yeah, we find it a really collaborative experience, a really great tool. Just to have that entry point into those discussions, and it really does broaden it out. You can zoom into a screen, but you can zoom out to what's the flow-on effect for the user. And it's really valuable straight after user research, because you've got those key insights there that you can draw from and actually start to see that change happen. Not sure if I've answered your question entirely, but yeah.
Just a bit of a follow-on from that. The HIPPO principle, so highest paid person to be. Do you find that interferes with the collaborative process like this?
It's definitely worth considering with the collaborative process, and it depends on who you're working with. So sometimes having those decision makers in the room is really valuable. Sometimes if there's someone who is very vocal, it might be better to have that smaller workshop first and then have another way to bring them on board, where they can still feel like they're being heard, but also you're making the time valuable with those that are maybe in the weeds or on the tools. So yeah, it is something to definitely balance, but it really depends on who's there, what that personality might be like.